Ajay, Mira, Karen, and Ritu were four friends who loved exploring abandoned places. They had already filmed in haunted houses and ruined forts. But this time they wanted something different, something darker. That's when they heard of the mansion. Everyone in the nearby towns told them to stay away. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and that very night they reached the place. The gate was broken, covered in rust, but it opened easily, as if welcoming them. The mansion stood tall, its windows glowing faintly even though no one lived inside. For a moment, the four hesitated. But then Ajay stepped forward, and the others followed. The wooden door creaked open at the slightest push. The inside was colder than the night air, and the smell of dampness and decay filled their lungs. The hall was huge. A grand chandelier, broken and tilted, still hung from the ceiling. Torn curtains moved slightly, though not a single breeze passed. On one wall, a massive portrait of a woman stared at them. Her black gown blended with the dark background, and her eyes seemed alive. They laughed nervously and kept walking. Down a hallway, they heard the faint cry of a baby. It was so unexpected that all of them froze in place. In a mansion abandoned for decades, how could there be a baby? Ajay whispered, "Let's check." Against the others' protests, he pushed a door open. The room was dusty, but in the middle stood a cradle, moving slowly back and forth as though rocked by invisible hands. The baby's cries grew louder, piercing, until suddenly they stopped. The cradle too stopped moving. The silence that followed was heavier than the cries. They rushed out, but the deeper they went, the more unnatural the place felt. Stairs creaked even when no one was stepping. Doors rattled though no one touched them. And sometimes they swore they heard their own names being whispered softly, right behind their ears. On the upper floor, they entered a bedroom. The bed looked freshly made, as if someone had just left it. When Mira lifted the blanket, she gasped, because there was nothing there. Yet the blanket fell back into perfect shape, as if an invisible body still lay beneath it. Then, from the corner of the room, a woman appeared. Her hair covered her face, her arms trembled unnaturally, and her presence froze the air. Before they could react, she vanished through the wall. Terror gripped them now. They decided to leave. But when they ran back to the stairs, they didn't find stairs. Instead, there stretched a corridor lined with endless doors. Every single door began to open on its own, one after the other, revealing glimpses of things that shouldn't exist. Rooms full of shadows, figures with hollow eyes, faces pressed against the glass of mirrors, all staring. Ajay, holding his camera, realized something horrifying. Through the lens, he could see tall figures standing right behind them. But when he lowered it, the hallway looked empty. "Don't look through the camera," he whispered, trembling. "It shows them." Still, the mansion pulled them deeper. They stumbled into a grand dining hall. The long table was filled with rotten food, black with mold. Around it sat shadow-like guests, completely still. As the four entered, every head turned toward them. Their mouths opened wide, but no words came out. Only one continuous scream that grew louder and louder until blood dripped from Ritu's ears. She fell, clutching her head, and before anyone could help her, hands emerged from under the table, pale and thin, pulling her into the darkness below. Her screams echoed once, then silence. She was gone. The three who remained were too shocked to speak. They ran blindly, turning corner after corner, but the mansion twisted itself. No matter where they went, they always ended up back at the portrait hall. But now the portrait was different. The woman was no longer painted. She stood outside the frame, her body towering, her eyes hollow, her stitched mouth opening slowly. Karan screamed and tried to fight back, raising his camera as if it could protect him. But in the lens, the woman appeared right behind him. Before he could turn, her hand pierced through him, pulling him into the portrait itself. His face was the last thing they saw before he disappeared into the canvas. Now only Ajay and Mira were left. They ran to the main door. This time it was wide open. Outside, the moonlight shone. Without thinking, they rushed forward. Relief filled their hearts until they realized they were standing again in the hall of the mansion. The door behind them had vanished. Mira collapsed, crying, whispering, "We will never leave." Ajay tried to comfort her, but as she looked into his face, her blood froze. His skin was pale, his eyes hollow, his mouth stitched shut just like the others. He looked at her and whispered in a voice that was no longer his, "You shouldn't have come here." The last thing Mira saw before the world around her turned. Black was the portrait on the wall. This time it showed her face, and in the empty mansion silence returned. Until the next visitors arrived,